Joining me now to help explain his position is Indiana Senator Evan Bayh. Senator, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Good to be back, Sean. Thank you.
All right. So the three of you are saying not a good time to not extend the Bush tax cuts or to let the Bush tax cuts expire. You're going against your party. Are you going to stand strong? Are you going to follow through? Is this a non-negotiable issue?
Sean, I think this is in the best interest of our country, and for that reason, I also think it's in the best interest of the Democratic Party. This recovery is much too fragile right now, and I don't think what we want to do is be creating more uncertainty, as you were pointing out, or increasing the burdens upon people who are important to making investment decisions, hiring decisions, and are important to consumer demand. So, look, the Democratic Party, all evidence to the contrary notwithstanding, is not a monolith. We do have some differences of opinion, and on this issue in particular.
Yeah, look, it's going to be interesting because the president obviously wants them to expire, especially for the wealthy. What do you say to Democrats that play the class warfare card and say, no, well, we'll just let them expire for, quote, the wealthiest Americans, those making over $200,000 or more, which, by the way, the top 10% pay over 70% of the income taxes in this country. Why would you argue that's a bad idea?
People in that top bracket, Sean, account for about 30% of consumption. Right now, people in the lower brackets are saving, paying down their credit card bills, paying off some of their other debts. So we don't want to dampen consumer demand in that top bracket because that would cause it to stall out for everybody. Second thing, many people in that bracket are the ones making the employment decisions, making the investment decisions. We raise their burdens right now, we're going to get less of the things that we want. So my message with regard to class warfare is that is the wrong way to go. We are all in this together. We want more successful people. That's what we want in our society, not penalizing those who've been successful.
All right, what do you make of recent elections? Virginia, Massachusetts, New Jersey. The president now in the polls, 38% of independents now support him. That was a big part of his electoral base in 2008. What has happened? Why are the American people seemingly rejecting most of, if not all of, the Obama agenda?
Well, if you look at those three states and polling now on the national basis, what really has bothered the independents is the budget deficit and the spending in Washington. And we've got to prove as a party that we can exercise some spending restraint, start getting the deficit down, and be for the kind of tax policies that will stimulate investment and growth rather than increase the burdens on business. I think that's the successful formula for the president and the Democratic Party.
You know, Senator, I've known you for a lot of years. You're one of the few Democrats, Democrats willing to come on this program. We've had some spirited debates over the year. I'll be honest, I was a little bit surprised as the president was moving forward. He promised unemployment wouldn't go above 8%. Otherwise, we faced catastrophe. You know, we're now near 10% unemployment. His policy obviously didn't work. $3 trillion in new debt that he's accumulated in 2 years. And on top of that, we've got health care that's coming, which is also going to cost the taxpayers money. I'll be frank, I was kind of surprised that somebody like yourself didn't stand up and put the brakes on what was not only not in the best interest of the Democratic Party in the long term, but the country. Why did you not come out with stronger opposition to these things?
Well, Sean, that's a longer conversation than we probably have time for in this program, so you'll need to ask me back a couple more times. But let me just say, in fairness to the president, he did inherit some pretty tough circumstances. And even back when he took office, conservative economists were saying that we needed something to stimulate the economy, to try and keep up, to fill in the absence of consumer demand at that time. We can argue about the timing on health care. I think you can make a credible argument that maybe focusing on the economy a little more intently, maybe the energy challenge might have been more timely. But, you know, we do have 35 million Americans without health insurance, Sean. And so for me on that, frankly, that was a very close call. It was one of these 51-49 kind of deals, and I felt, okay, let's try and do something. The biggest failure on health care, and there are a lot of aspects to that bill we could talk about, is the thing that really is bothering most of your viewers is the cost of their health care, and that remains to be addressed. And I think most observers candidly would say there are a few experiments in there, but we need to do more in terms of getting the costs down.
All right, Ed Rendell is predicting that in 2012 that Barack Obama will have a primary challenge. A mutual friend of ours, you know Doug Schoen pretty well, he and Pat Caddell just this week authored a piece in the Wall Street Journal. The title of the article is Our Divisive President. And he says in that article, rather than being a unifier, Mr. Obama has divided America on the basis of race, class, and partisanship. And he said, moreover, his cynical approach to governance has encouraged his allies to pursue a similar strategy of racially divisive politics on his behalf. That is a pretty severe charge. These are coming from Democrats, not from Republicans. Your reaction?
Well, as you point out, Doug is a dear friend of mine. I've known him for years and years. I think some of the rhetoric in the piece was perhaps a bit harsh, but I think, look, what we need to do is focus on what's good for the country. And I would say to my fellow Democrats, and I think what's going on here, Sean, is that we're a little sensitive to the base of the party, and there's some folks who are very, their rhetoric is overly harsh, and they engage in some of the class war and that kind of thing. And the only way Democrats govern in our country is to make common cause with independents and moderates. That's the only way we rule. So we need to focus on pragmatic solutions to our problems that will move this country forward.
Are you saying the Democratic Party then, from your vantage point, has moved too far to the left?
Well, some elements have, and I think you see, look how Blanche Lincoln was attacked in Arkansas because she didn't toe the party line 100%. And there are some in the party who are pursuing policies that alienate independents, alienate moderates, and that will only go on so long, Sean. And those folks are going to have a chance to express themselves this November, and it may not be a very happy evening. Well,
I guess the most radical element then is, and the person that you'd have to point the finger at the most is the president himself, because he's driving the boat, he's driving the agenda.
Well, he's ultimately responsible for the decisions, but I would disagree with your characterization there a little bit. I do think that some in the party are excessively sensitive to some of the furthest elements in our party, and sometimes rhetorically or occasionally substantively, that gets us out of center. That's not good substance, and that's not good policy. But look, I honestly think the president is trying to do the right thing, wants to do the right thing. I'm not always sure he's getting the best advice.
All right, the last question. We've talked a lot this week about the court decision as it relates to the Arizona immigration law. Is it fair to say that court ruling, that it appears the federal government will not protect American citizens and enforce the law, and now the state of Arizona isn't allowed to do it as well?
Well, that ruling was a mishmash. It struck down part of the law, it upheld part of the law. I think what it points out, Sean, is that, look, as a former governor, I got a lot of empathy for states that are suffering because the federal government's not doing its job. We need to secure the border and then figure out a long-term solution to this problem so that states like Arizona aren't left holding the bag.
All right. Evan Bayh, thanks for being with us. Senator, appreciate it. Thanks for being on board.
Always a pleasure.